Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore.
Here.
Councilman McNamara. Councilman Isili.
Here.
Councilman Powell.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
All right, thank you. We're going to start the work session today with a presentation from Janice Shear, our Town Planning and Development Administrator, with respect to the Water Quality Plan 10-year update.
Good morning, Supervisor, members of the board.
Morning.
Jackie Fenlon was going to join me, but she's stuck in traffic. So I
Oh,
think she's just
yeah,
going
it's
to
a
be in
bear.
the audience. It's been terrible this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's been almost 10 years since I wrote the first plan that was to accompany the 20% use. I can't even.
I know.
10 years. It'll be 10 years. So when we wrote this plan, it was because 20% of the water quality funding was going to be allowed to be used for water quality projects, but it had to have a project plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the part of this project plan was that you update it every 5 to 10 years. So we're at almost next year will be 10 years since its adoption,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. So we did do an update. It's pretty simplistic as far as what it is.
Does the update fully replace the prior version?
The prior version stands because it's still the same idea: reduction, remediation, restoration. So we kind of use that mantra based on like reduce, reuse, recycle.
Mm.
The idea is reduction, remediation, restoration, and those are the buckets or silos that the various projects fall into, but knowing full well that reduction is the number one thing. So reducing the nitrogen inputs and reducing any chemical loading on the environment will always and every time be more important than the remediation, because you can't truly remediate or restore something while the inputs are coming in.
Mm.
So that was the setup, and so it doesn't replace it, but the maps do, right? There's newer maps, and I'll get into that.
So let me just understand. So the document from 9 or 10 years ago is still intact, but you took it and updated it, and that's what the new one is?
Yes.
I see.
And I'm going to walk you all through it, and for the benefit of anyone watching, just so that so you know the contents of the new plan and how we laid it out. And also, we're not, we can change this format if you want it to be different. Like, I'm not, no, it doesn't have to be any certain way. We just try to think about it, like what makes sense and how can we lay this out. So if you just go to the table of contents, I can just go through like how the plan is laid out. And that is, it starts with just the current water quality status, which you just had a whole presentation very recently. So this is very timely to come after that, after Chris Gobler and others, Bob DeLuca and from McDonald were here talking about water quality, and so the current status, and then how we implemented the plan, and then what are the strengths, and we go through like the different various laws, the reduction and the programs that we've been engaged in, the remediation and restoration, recommendations. There's like 3 different recommendation sets, and then opportunities, looking out on that horizon between now and the next update, and what you'd like to accomplish. So moving forward, I'm not going to belabor the point that the water quality, there's a map here by the Nature Conservancy and SOMAS, Stony Brook, on page 2, which shows we still have a significant amount of impairment. There's still blue algae. There's still a lot of legacy nitrogen moving through the groundwater. So we still have a lot of work to do. I think that's the message of that map. And then moving forward, we can talk about, like, starting on page 4, it just talks about, well, how do we do this? How have we been doing it? Are there opportunities to change the process? You've been sitting through many presentations at once. We're always trying to make it so that it's easier for applicants and easier for the board to make decisions. So right now, the way that we've been working on it is that, it's really been moved it's a long-range plan, so that's why I'm presenting it to you, because it comes through long-range planning, but it's implemented through CPF. And they have Jackie and her team, Emily, Renee Riley, Joan Duvall, and of course Dan McCormick. All of them have been working to implement the water quality side, and they sit with the Water Quality Committee, which was created as part of the law that there had to be a 5-member committee who looks and makes recommendations to you on expenditures. So we have kind of a process right now where a grant period opens. People submit for a review. The committee looks at everything and kind of scores them like on a rubric. They then hold public hearings and make recommendations. And then we get into a contract with people on their water quality projects, and then they undertake the work. And then, we have a new round. So it's kind of ongoing. Some of the recommendations are related to what happened. Do we ever get a report from those people? Do we know if there was a measurable impact? What kinds of things do we want to hear back from? Or we have all the projects in the back here, because when we set this up, we created these summary sheets so everybody could easily go on the website and see who applied, what they were asking for, what they got, so it's just easy to follow along. And I know a lot of agencies like Peconic Estuary Program, they look for that information. So we made it, when we started it, easy to find and easy to understand. So it's all there.
Would our program, after you get the application, we get the applications in and the committee reviews it and it goes to the board, and then there's a determination, and then there's the contract sometime thereafter. So is it correct to say that the applicant is not allowed to do commence the project until there's a signed contract?
That's one of the recommendations in here, that you may want to look at some of these that are in a time constraint and allow a reimbursement. So say, there's a category called reimbursement where they do the work, they show you all their invoices, and it's not like more than a year later and you could just reimburse them for that work.
Because it's important to do it, because you have like bat season, and you have different seasons where you can't do stuff, the dredging season.
Right. So this is a program that you can make this how you want it to be. So we've made it like you're contracted with the town to do said work, but some people want to do said work and then just apply for a reimbursement, and it's beyond the 20,000 IA reimbursement. So we can create a code just like we did for IA that allows someone to just rolling at any time in the year, just submit for reimbursement. It's not really a grant round. A grant round is like, you're doing a major overhaul, restoration. Some people just want to be able to get that work underway, but we still need all their receipts and all the things.
Yeah, it's just sometimes, it's a year between the time you submit, and you have to pretty much be shovel ready by when you submit. And then you don't get the contract till a year later, and so there's a lot of time that's gone by when people could have been doing their project. But I understand from speaking with Jackie, previously, that there's a concern about letting people do the projects and then seek reimbursement. So,
well, that's because the way it's currently set up. And you could, under Chapter 140, create a reimbursement section in the code that, like right now, we had that for IAs, but only up to $20,000.
so maybe we
So
should
you
talk
could
about that
add that.
in
Yeah.
the context of this, whether we want that or not.
To allow it, and then if you say you want to go forward, we can amend the code. how
Allow
you
it
see
only in emergency circumstances, or just allow it? Because we don't want to be the determination of, was that an
The thing
emergency?
is so there's people who are going to upgrade their system whether or not they get a grant, right? But there are some circumstances that you know of and I know of where there's been it's a nonprofit entity and they put out a significant amount of money and now they're looking to be reimbursed. Why is that wrong? Why is that bad? There's no problem there. That our limit in reimbursement is only a single family 20,000 limit, and everyone else gets pushed into this grant program. And you could start to say, well, that's not really appropriate. There's more buckets. There's more ways to get through this process.
Let's say somebody wants some condominium association or a municipality wants to put in some bioswales or something. Is that going to be captured too? So they can go
That's
ahead
different.
with the project and
I think that's a
get
restoration
reimbursed.
project, right? So we just have to always think like, what are we talking about? The biggest thing is the reduction and getting upgrades to sanitary systems. So we want to allow those things to reduce the nitrogen impacts, right? You just look.
No, but I mean, we're not just talking about IA systems, right? We're talking about all the water quality grant applications.
Right,
that
and
come
I'm
in.
trying to say, okay, from first instance, we have outside of the grant program in our regular code, just the regular IA system upgrades, residential. That's one track. And they're not even reimbursement. We'll pay the contractor directly now because we realized over time, some people didn't have the money to lay out. So we fixed that.
That's
one.
I think that's a big issue that I've heard.
So that's one track. The second tier, let's call it, there's no other tier. You just jump into a grant program, like this whole grant round thing that's not exactly great for people who just want to upgrade, but it's beyond the 20,000. We say, well, commercial properties, nonprofits, whoever you are, you're a church, but it's more than $20,000. You get put into this grant process. We're saying maybe there's another track where it's more than 20 and they just are asking for reimbursement because the contract is to get them to perform the work. If they're already going to do the work, that's the best part of all. Then they just have to submit for reimbursements.
But why would we just have that apply to the IA systems and not other water quality projects that the committee approves or recommends?
Maybe you can. That's what I'm saying. This is all can be customized however you see fit.
Mhm.
So this has some recommendations related to that, but I think it's a good thing to make it easier, not harder.
Well, in that line of thinking, then, especially as it pertains to the IA systems and upgrades, do we have to have a layer here that it has to go after the Water Quality Advisory Committee, that it has to go to the town board? I feel like that extra layer really just kind of extends the time frame here.
It
for
does,
people.
because you are the ultimate arbiter and controller of the funding, right? So you must choose to pass a resolution. You can make it easier to do that. It could be rolling admission, it could be, but in the end, the Water Quality Advisory is only recommending something to you. And in the end, you have to approve it, authorize it.
I don't think we've ever gotten a request for an IA system since I've
No,
been
not the
here.
IA systems. I
Oh.
mean any of these grants beyond
Oh,
20,000.
you're just talking about the IA.
We can make
I'm
it
specifically talking
procurement
about
rules.
residential IA upgrades. Like does it
They
have to
are
go?
not in that grant.
Okay.
They're in over here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm pointing to the code here about chapter 140.
Okay.
So we have the rolling IAs, and then we have a grant. So, and there's kind of nothing in the middle. And that's all I'm suggesting, is that there's a way to make some of those things that are only in the grant round. They could be restoration. They could be IAs that are more than 20, but less than, choose a number.
Did you hear that the governor signed legislation yesterday allowing for another 25,000 per household
state.
for the IA systems?
That's fantastic.
So there's a lot of money out there now. The state, the county, the town,
Oh,
more
yes.
than the cost of the systems.
So it's 20 from the county, 25 from the state, or the county's just taking it
No,
at
the
25?
25 from the 25,000. That was my understanding, and an additional 25,000 from the state now, and 20,000 from the county.
Up
and
to
then,
20,000, and
And
I
what's
think
our system?
Up to 20
Up to 20.
but everybody takes off whatever somebody else is giving. So it's a little interesting. You can't, obviously you wouldn't want to double dip or charge twice. So you have to show who's
you could
getting.
match funding.
You can match fund. You can say, okay, here's all the funding I'm getting from the state.
Yep.
Here's all the funding. It's been my understanding to now that the county implements the state money.
Yeah,
So the money
that's
that
true.
the county gives you is from the state. So it used to be 20, maybe the state upped it to 25. I don't know if it's additional. I didn't.
I think
hear
it's
this until
additional.
right now.
I think it's additional.
That's great.
Mhm.
So the point, just generally, I want to move on because I know you have a long day, is that there's a way to customize this every year to make it easier and better. And you have that at your ability to do that at any time. So we have a lot of different, like as you brought up, it's good because on page 5, it's talking about all the strengths of our water quality. We have the Suffolk County law. We have the Environmental Bond Act, which I've never seen anything from, actually, the Bond Act that was passed. We had the Federal Infrastructure Act bill money, and then it's just talking about sort of, it's a little out of order, but just this is all just talking about all the good things that have happened. And we were able to get, as you know, $19 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law for Riverside. We were able to create that septic system replacement program ourselves. So all these things are to say. So then on page 8, you can see how much have you spent. So since that program inception, the IA now, not the grant necessarily, we're just talking about the IA upgrades by watershed. And so the town's paid over $30 million to upgrade IA systems across the town. And you can see how that lays out, the most being in the South Shore Estuary and Peconic Estuary. So we have a lot more to do, the lowest being at Sagaponack and Agawam watershed, and Mecox, only 66 people in the Mecox Bay watershed have been part of this. And then Teresa was able to get the data on the bottom, just about, you know, what kind of funding people got from the state and county, so by watershed. So the county and state have given $6 million and $7.5 million, $6 million being the county and $7.5 million being the state, and $30 million from the town. So we've done a significant amount of funding for the IA systems. And there's more to do. So this just shows you, the next map is just about, you know, the like it's sort of a color-coded version of that little chart of how many, you know, have been done per watershed, per hamlet. And then moving on, it just shows again more, it's just sort of like by hamlet, sort of a graph. And you can see that North Sea sort of is the winner here as far as how many have been installed, followed by Hampton Bays and Noyak. Those are the largest amounts that have been installed by hamlet. So then we have kind of like a highlight section starting on page 12, beginning with the village of West Hampton Beach. And the supervisor is more than familiar with that. As the mayor, you were able to avail the village of all the great funding when the program began, and do the stormwater recovery and also the connection to Gabreski Airport. So this is sort of just like a page about like how the town is successful. And then, you know, there's more like in terms of just highlighting some projects like Alewife Creek, and saying that between 2018 and 2024, the town expended approximately $21 million to restore habitat throughout the town, inclusive of shellfish and eelgrass restoration projects, creek flow restoration, dredging projects to remove nutrient-laden sediments. So then we have more about that later. But it's just to highlight, like, the town has significantly invested in green infrastructure, over $11 million, and PRBs, as you know, rain gardens, constructed wetlands.
Jackie's here, she's gonna join us.
So that's all been great. And then on page 14, it talks about the opportunities that, you know, basically it started out pretty low. A lot of people were concerned about the IRS, that there was a whole thing back then, I don't know if anybody remembers. That counted when you got the grant, that counted as income and you were taxed on it.
They fixed that,
And
right?
they finally fixed all that, so that's fantastic. And there's been significant strides in being able to pay people directly, as I mentioned earlier, so that the CPF program will pay the contractor, so somebody doesn't have to lay out the money and then get reimbursed, which was another like kind of barrier to entry type of thing.
So I just want to just kind of bring us back to the basics here a little bit. And so this update to the plan really just expands the area in which people can be qualified to receive the rebate from the town.
Yep. That's one of the
Which was
things.
one of the main goals that this board, I think, has been collectively
does
trying
too.
to
What?
aim.
Yeah. I
So
didn't
we
realize
get
that.
into that in a moment, but I just don't want to jump ahead, but yes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so on page 17 is just some general recommendations that we've heard, and this is again a 10-year update, but it worked with the state to expand water quality funding to 50%. We've heard a lot about that. So right now it's at 20%. You may annually increase it by 5%, working with the state, whatever number you feel is appropriate. So that's the recommendation. Conduct the second
Yeah, we
recommendation.
should.
Yeah, so the more, we're
Running out
running
of
out
open
of
space.
land
Right.
to buy, and the next frontier is sort of this
Yeah.
and scenic view sheds and
Mhm.
scenic and historic resources, as you'll hear later, and things along those lines. So work to get that number. I don't know what the right percentage is, but there should be a higher percent than 20%. Conduct a hamlet by hamlet assessment to identify the properties that can be acquired for water quality improvement. Require submission of annual open sourced water quality monitoring reports. So one of the things about this program was that the program was not allowed to pay for monitoring, and I don't know if the state law has changed yet, but we would like certain people, not just an IA, I'm not talking about IA, I'm talking about grant larger projects. If their match, we used to talk about like the match being putting in a monitoring well so that we can see what's going on with the groundwater. And if they do that, if they're required to do
I
that.
think the county is working on that. From my understanding, Julia Priolo attended a seminar with PEP recently, and I think they've secured funding or they're on the cusp of securing funding.
That's great. So the more water quality monitoring, the more data, the better we know if we're doing a good job and if the money is being spent appropriately and where. That's really the point. Making those reports available and new tools for quantifying nitrogen reduction, because we've been using an EPA tool that's been since taken down since the federal government took it away. There's not that tool anymore online. The other recommendation is the other frontier is cesspools. So a cesspool is different than a septic system. There's like words that we say that people think a cesspool is the same thing as a conventional sanitary system. And a cesspool is basically a dry well with holes. And it's like your great-grandfather dug a hole and lined it with bricks. And that's where the waste pipe went out to. That's a cesspool. And that is not good. Like, so in 1973, they changed it to a conventional sanitary system, had a holding tank. And even that's now being upgraded to these IA systems. So a cesspool are these really old dry well brick, most of the time brick, sometimes concrete, sometimes rubble. Like they're not even stone. Yeah. And those are the ones we need to start looking at and being like, we got to sunset this. If you have a house, a lot of historic homes still have these. If they've never upgraded or never done any work to the house, they probably have a cesspool.
So is that a recommendation that we sunset and then require people to put in the new IA systems? Mm.
And that would be a great thing. And so we have a map here about the potential total cesspools, which are a significant amount.
But if we require, we have to make sure we have the infrastructure and systems in place to help guide the residents if they need to go through the application process, which I know we're working with, trying to create that cohesive synergy with other organizations and CPF to make sure people understand the process. But we just want to make sure that that's there when we get to that point.
Right, and these are all just recommendations. So these are your foundational recommendations that then you take to then implement as laws or as programs, however you see fit.
How do you know how many houses have that?
So we looked at a database of how many houses, we did a query in GIS
Right.
and looked at how many homes predate 1973 in their building
Okay.
record. And then if they ever had any significant building permit to build any, an addition or rebuild it or remodel it, because then that would have prompted the health department to say, oh, you got to put on a conventional system. But there's a lot that have never done anything. they
I-
most likely, and we have to still ground truth all of this, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I just wanted to add that we did have some data, and I don't think it's exact, right? But it was some data that I believe that the county preliminarily shared with GIS. But some of those cesspools, we were noting them, and Ross Baldwin in GIS had an idea. We don't know that it's exact because, again, it's people who probably reported that they have a cesspool to the health department, or the health department had some record of that. But we use that as an important portion of why we wanted to expand the water quality priority area. So when we knew that there was a lot of, like a high density of cesspools rather than sanitary systems in a given neighborhood or in an area, we actually looked at that during the plan, the map update, to be like, okay, look at this. We've got a lot of, known cesspools, historic cesspools and outdated systems in this area. Let's expand to this neighborhood.
How is the update map coming along?
They're here in this book.
Yeah, so so Janice is going to get to that, but I worked really closely with the Water Quality Advisory Board. We reviewed it with also the Suffolk County Watershed Map. So we kind of went beyond the Suffolk County Watershed Map objectives, because they had different years and tiers that they were looking for. We went essentially beyond that. We made it all one water quality priority area. And then in specific areas where we knew there were, freshwater wetlands or historic cesspools, we then went even greater. And so that's what we tried to do. And we worked very closely with, the water
For the
quality.
public now to get the grants in those areas,
Well, so this plan would adopt that new expanded.
so we have to adopt it.
We didn't get to that part yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
looking
we're
for that.
skipping ahead.
I'm
a little
excited
bit.
about that.
Yeah.
The whole town is a priority, right? But
Yes.
the point of even calling it a priority is just for funding. So what if your money ran out? What if you only had so much money? Which one would come first? That was the whole point of having high priority and medium priority. It wasn't that one was better than another.
Thinking
It was-
ahead.
It was just how to allocate. If you had the program was such a success, and we're very fortunate that we have a very good amount of funding to allocate. But what if you didn't? Where would the priority lie? And that's what this is all about. So the maps were updated to expand the priority areas, show how much protected area you have left, and then the other places are just IA upgrades, right? So it's single family. So you can see that on the map, like this is Bridgehampton, right? So if you start with that, you can see all the pink area where it was one time pink and yellow. Now it's all pink, and then you can see like all the protected farmland areas, and then like sort of little subdivisions.
So as we increase the areas, are we going to do outreach? It's like anybody who had a permit prior to 1960, are we going to send them information on how they can change over?
I think we need to develop the program and the sunset law and how you want to implement it and roll it out, and is it all at once? Is it by hamlet? We need to talk about that.
Right.
But right here is just a recommendation that we should really target the cesspool areas, and the maps now make that possible. So if you upgrade the maps, then you just have to create a program and you have all that aligned. So the mapping is just an exercise that says the county, like Jackie was saying, it follows the county priorities. The county priorities are also just about funding. The priority areas are all about where we're going to put the money toward first, second, over time.
So we changed our priority areas now? Is that what we're looking
We took away
at?
medium. There's no we had high and medium priority.
And now it's just priority areas. So it's all combined into
That's
one.
great.
It's the whole town.
This whole area is now priority, mostly, and it follows the Suffolk County priorities.
So just a hypothetical, if we're looking at Bridgehampton, so let's say somebody sort of in the center where it's not in the the priority range.
Like the white and green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what happens in that scenario if they apply?
So there is a petition, which I have to admit, if they show good cause that they did have a failing system, or they have a sensitivity, like a environmental factor that also weighs on the property, and they'd like to seek the IA system, I actually have authority to sign that petition. They have to give me, usually like a letter, photos about the failure, the age of the system, but then we have already in place a petition program.
Great.
So I always kind of tell people that, because they might apply and be like, oh, I'm not in the
I'm
area.
not in that
And I'm
area,
like,
yeah.
please tell me the factors of your, because if it's just a renovation, and you had a standard sanitary system, maybe not. But If you're very close to freshwater wetlands, that's an indicator. If you're in the aquifer protection overlay district, that's an indicator. Even if you're close to, tidal wetlands, that's an indicator as well. But most of the tidal wetlands are caught because most of our priority areas already were kind of along the coast.
Now, Jackie, just to sort of, I don't want to change gears too much, but if folks, they qualify, one of the big hurdles for individuals is that they're afraid of the after costs, the costs of fixing their landscaping, for instance, when they dig it up. Now, is there now funding? I believe there's now funding available for.
Well, so that was an important point that the town actually pays for restoration measures. So that is where it's different from the county and the state. We actually look at them, and as long as they're directly related to your IA system install, we will cover it. So we will cover reseeding your lawn. We will cover, maybe like the transplanting of trees. We will, a pathway that needs to be restored.
That's a really important point to emphasize, just because of the fact that there could be some people that don't want to do it because of potential costs that come after. But you're saying the town's funding streams can help.
You just said that the whole town is a priority area, but then the map show.
I said the whole town is a priority in terms of like everywhere is important to upgrade if you could, but the funding priorities are delineated here. And if you had extra money, if they say in the end of the program you had money and somebody was outside the priority area, you could still fund more, right?
I think what we're also doing too is I worked really hard with like Kathleen Murray and Emily when I first started at CPF in the fall of 2022, because we were looking at update of 140. So just so you guys know, just before you guys, I think Rick was here and Cindy was here, but before you guys started, we had removed the income eligibility because there used to be a tiered system, and we would pay like 100% of the system if you made under this, 75% of the system if you made under this, and 50% of the system if you made under this. That was actually stopping people from applying just because of their income status. So some people, even though they could maybe afford to do it voluntarily, it was kind of deterring people from doing it. So we said, hey, we don't really care how much you make, who you are. This program is here to improve the water and the water quality. So we removed that, and thankfully that started in effect in I think it was January 3rd of 2023. So then we worked really hard to revamp our applications and kind of get the word out, and also catch up on applications that might have been denied in the past. So we've been doing that the last 2 years, and it's been really good because now everyone gets the full $20,000. And like Michael said, that does include restoration work, which the county and the state program was, you were not eligible in the past.
So the recommendation is to update, so the code would then reference these updated maps.
Okay.
So that would be,
So the maps would be updated to show now there's not low, medium, high priority.
It's just
all
called priority area.
priority.
You see it in the pink, it's just called priority area.
I mean,
Whereas
all
we
the
looked at the
homes
old
are gonna
ones.
get
you
there
could s-
eventually,
Yeah.
so it's
So
really.
see how before they were yellow and pink? Now this whole area is pink. You know what I mean? So that's just all priority. There's no medium. Basically, we removed the medium priority and just made it priority.
Yeah.
But that, like Jackie said, that doesn't mean that if you're outside the priority and you have good cause and there's money left in the fund,
Right.
for that year, you could get potentially funded.
We've been
But
successful.
this is single family stuff, and I don't want to take away from the other things that are going on. So I don't want to.
Okay,
So, so the recommendation for reduction, I'm on page 22, by the way, is update all the priority maps. Consider, and now the grant round, everybody sort of, it's been a rule of thumb. It's pretty much 80-20,
It really depends.
It
It's very
depends.
specific on the applicant, because
So-
when it's a non-for-profit, they can't afford much of a match at all, except for maybe preliminary engineering and design, or
But that's still significant.
or operations and maintenance, right? The continued maintenance and operations, we consider that as possibly a match. It might not be something that they put on the application as hey, we paid $20,000 for the plan, but we do take into account that if they're gonna operate and maintain this, that is a match to make sure that the system, stays maintained and stays operational, keeps providing that water quality effort.
So every year in the consolidated funding for the state, they post the annual match, what you're required and what's eligible. So the recommendation here is just annually require, post that, because you may say this year is one thing and next year may not be the same. So an annual match or recommendation for, these things are eligible, or you just go by the same way you've been doing it. But I think it's good to have it a little bit more known when people start out.
And I think in the initial portion, even just in talking with Janice and working as liaison, it was always recommended that there was like a 50% match. But we found that a lot of people came to us and were like, well, we really can't afford putting in a 50% match. So we were kind of looking at it. And for commercial entities, we look at these a little bit more closely because obviously the commercial entity might have, a capital, reason for doing this or an expansion that's necessary. So we just take those applications very seriously. But a lot of times now we're finding with the non-for-profits, they really need like almost 100% funding other than the preliminary engineering and design. So I think it's a good thing. And also, we were probably being very careful, right? When we were implementing this program too, we were kind of like, give us a match, show us that you're committed to the project. But I'm just finding in reality now, a lot of people need, significant help. So there's not really a set percentage. It really is kind of project specific.
So what is this recommendation that we should post what the annual match is? How would we do that?
That was our recommendation. Jackie's saying maybe not, but that was what, I think annually, when you say, okay, let's just say you have $10 million to put toward the granting round, you may say, well, everybody's got to at least show 10% match in kind services, operations and maintenance, putting in a monitoring well, their own capital expenditures based on, whatever their entity is. We're just saying you should post that, what's required of people in the application annually, whatever that is. Or if there's nothing, then you would write there's no match.
This
But
has nothing to do with the IAs, right? This is all the other
granting
projects.
stuff. Yeah.
This would be the grant application.
This is just reduction recommendations in the grant round.
We could put something that, the
It's up
board
to
could
you.
require.
It's just a recommendation. And if you don't like it, we can cross it out or you can ignore it.
So that would be for all commercial entities, right?
Yeah.
What about our in-house? What about the highway department
Yeah, that's
requesting
another
funding?
thing. The big thing was don't use this water quality money to offset like the highway budget. It's not it's supposed to be for water quality projects.
But a drainage project could
If
be.
it's a
so-
drainage project, that makes sense, but not just like,
Carte blanche.
carte blanche. You want to be like, it has to be eligible and it has to, but the other point I wanted to
we have a
make is
lot
that
of
the
highway-
town projects are rolling. You don't have a deadline like the grant round.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you missed it, because these are your projects, right?
So-
All our departments are working for you to do these things, so they shouldn't be subject to.
So it
deadline.
used to happen that way where they kind of fell within the grant round. And I have to admit, like I worked hard to really try to separate that out because I want to make town projects a
You
priority.
said that early on. I worked hard to make sure that too.
No, I'm sure you did. But some of them, like I know some of Kristen's projects even, for whatever reason, they kind of got grabbed in a grant round. But I'm trying to reach out to department heads, and I'm sure Janice did too, but just to try to fund them in the beginning half of the year so that they're almost like getting all their plans together the fall before so we can review them. Because once we're in the grant round, say like in March, once the private or like non-for-profit applications are due, it just takes a lot of time to review those. So I do want to give, town department projects that are ready to go a priority.
They're not even in the grant round. Town projects are rolling. In other words, they're not even subject to the rubric of the other ones. They're supposed to just be allowed to come in as you need them. So, but yes, you can make it however you want it to be. Just going on, then we get into just, keep going with centralized IA systems where it makes sense. So there's a property that we bought next to Lobster Inn, Inlet Road community for water quality, and that was supposed to be a centralized IA system for that whole neighborhood. So we bought the property, but we haven't
Going that far yet.
initiated that plan. So this recommendation is initiate these centralized IA systems for entire neighborhoods.
How would you initiate that plan?
Well, that would have to be like a capital project, or you'd have to put out an RFP for some private entity to work with all those homeowners to then place the IA system on the town water quality piece and hook everybody up.
And how many houses that include? There's a lot
I'd
of
say
houses
like
out there.
30.
Well, I mean, I guess it would depend how big that specific property is, you know what I mean, and what we could kind of fit. It kind of be
There was that
case specific.
whole- yeah,
the
but that
back
was
part
the
of Lobster.
reason for the recommendation is
Yeah.
because we did buy that, and there's been other ones that I've bought along the way. Like, this is a great water quality project, and then the recommendation is, okay, now,
Someone should bring
implement
that.
that.
How much do those cost, those centralized wastewater treatment plants?
It depends.
Is that just like a huge IA system?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
It's
large.
it's like a basically a
It's about
sewage
30
treatment
30
plant,
houses
but
in that
it's a-
neighborhood.
Janice, have you seen a design of one of those recently? No. Yeah, but you think around 30 homes?
Oh, in Inlet Road, I mean.
Oh, Inlet Road. Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
how much can they support it? They can go, they can be scaled depending on.
So I think it depends on the property we're situating it on.
So just say if it's
The
30
design.
houses, what is the cost to the house? Is there any cost for them to hook up?
Well, that would be the whole thing, like, instead
have
of
to
the
look at it.
20,000 each, you would be
Yeah.
doing one mega project for a neighborhood, let's say, and centralizing it, because who knows, in 50 years, there'll be some other great thing. And wouldn't it be easier to upgrade one system that's serving a neighborhood versus everybody's thing? You know what I mean? So that's the idea there, whether or not that comes to be, but saying, you're buying these properties for water quality purposes as they come up. And some of them have been identified for these centralized wastewater treatment systems for neighborhoods.
Interesting idea.
And
Yeah.
this recommendation is to now, look at that over time, over the next 10 years.
But I know we
figure
have,
out
we
which
have
ones.
bought other properties where we said for water quality down the road, whether it be a sewage treatment plant or something, that people don't even know. They're just sitting there as vacant property. We're not gonna force anybody to upgrade in an area like that. I mean, we're waiting for down the road for new technology or something like that,
Right.
or
But in the
need.
case of the Inlet Road neighborhood, most of the people wanted it.
Right.
So,
We take a poll, see if they want it, and if they
if they don't, then you
Yeah.
would probably,
just let it sit.
And I think there's about 4 that we have right now. I asked Ross, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's about 4 that we bought with the thinking that there would be a cluster system. And those were in like kind of denser, existing, historically developed areas. But the property obviously that we have would support a certain capacity. So obviously a
I wanna overload
smaller
it either.
property wouldn't support as many homes, but it's important in these historic areas. And to centralize it is right. It would basically be like a mini STP that's an IA system.
and then everybody is just hooked up to that, which
Yeah,
would be
that's
much
great,
easier.
yeah.
Who would maintain it, like going forward? Would that be?
There
Well, so
is, there's several
They're
ways.
town-owned, but it would be
There's
structured.
more ways you could structure. You can structure it almost like a similar little sewer district, basically, if you wanted to. And then there's a couple of
Taxing
ways.
district?
You could do it that way, or we could just, there's more than one way to do it.
Good.
We have to think through it.
Would be a good sample to do.
Yeah. So that's a recommendation, is kind of like, think about those things. Just about rebating back permit fees.
Where's that rebating back?
That would be, I'm sorry,
What page are you on now?
I'm on between 22 and 23.
Okay.
I'm on the top of 23, just rebating application fees. And then it goes into the cesspool amortization sunset, how that would look. Obviously that's got to be codified.
Is this board ready for another amortization?
Oh.
Maybe, this is a 10-year plan, right? So
And also, I see the next one is what Dr. Gobler suggested, that we do upon sale or transfer of the property.
which is really important.
Yeah.
And then this next one was what we talked about earlier. If the grant timing does not allow with the timeline, the town should allow for reimbursement, and that could just be a separate, like, kind of track where you're not in a grant round, you're in a reimbursement because you took the initiative to upgrade your sanitary system, and now you have your receipts and everything, and you're asking for reimbursement because it's more than 20,000. How do we do that? Let's think about that.
Why are we just limiting it to the IA systems and not the other projects?
We don't have to. That's a good point.
I don't know, I mean, maybe,
I'm comfortable with starting with it with the IA systems because, the other ones, if it's an aquatic habitat restoration, you know what I mean? Those, like Janice was saying earlier, I was listening in while I was stuck in
yeah,
traffic.
because it's a year by the time, you're shovel ready, you apply, and then you have to wait a whole year before you can start the project till we get the contract.
It's very
And the
frustrating.
state doesn't even require that. The state lets you start your projects and then get reimbursement once the contract's
I think
signed.
the concern was too, though, we are a little wary of people maybe, using, like, when do we stop? You know what I mean? So, like, you did a survey 5 years ago. Do we pay for your survey 5
No,
years
it says
ago?
within a year.
Yeah, no,
A
and
year-
I
a year of expenditures, so you can't.
Yeah.
You're in a bounded
But
area.
that was kind of our concern, right? Because like we don't want to be paying for maybe some other surveying or maintenance costs. You know, we're just being wary of, you know, but I think it is good because if somebody needs to put it in and needs to put it in now, you know, they might be mandated by the health department. It might be because they need to open their business. There's different, you know, it's very case specific time requirements. And we tell everyone who asks us about the grant program the anticipated time frame. So if it's a large project, you know, they understand that. But, you know, like what Janice said, maybe we can pay for the costs from the year prior. You know, and there's times where we've discussed maybe we could make, you know, internally even a contract retroactive to January 1, right? So we can take into some of the costs earlier on. But I think with IA systems, it's kind of important because that's treating the nitrogen and that's treating the effluent. You know, we could maybe expand it to other projects like
Well, I
aquatic
think
restoration.
most of the other projects are
But then-
treating the nitrogen.
Why don't we talk about it and like work that out and take a look at what that might look like? And this is the basic recommendation, and we can say, it says if grant timing does not align with the applicant's timeline to install an IA upgrade, we can add or other remediation or restoration project.
Yeah.
You
And I'm
know,
just-
just to add it in there. Does that make sense?
And as somebody who
This is just-
implements this, it just, I'm concerned about like, how do I make sure that we're always budgeting appropriately, right? Because some people who are doing it in advance and have a great project, but then we're gonna get a lot of rolling applications in. But I really understand it with the IA systems, you know, we wanna treat that.
That's the goal, is to get people to upgrade. So if they already upgrade on their own volition, why not reimburse them for that? That would be
Yeah, I
good.
agree, Jackie. I think that even if you started it prior, you had not put in for a grant and you come later, it still should go in the next round because that's the money we've allocated and we're budgeting for.
It's
Otherwise,
just, you
it
know,
kinda-
it's like I have a yearly fund, right? So if they're rolling, it's just a little hard to keep track, you know, because I might have a great project that comes in at the end of the year, but then everyone else who is kind of like prepared and, you know, like was anticipating their project to start the next year, we might have already funded them, or, you know, it's just procedurally we would have to.
So this is not the
work that
rule
out.
now.
No,
This
it's not.
would have to be adopted.
It's at your discretion now.
It's a
It's
recommendation.
not discussed. It's left open. It's happened
Oh, I thought there
before.
was something that said, you know, we don't pay out until there's a contract. You can't do the work and we can't do the work
Although
till
there
there's a
have been
contract.
extenuating circumstances where you have allowed
That's
that.
in our general water quality grant project, is like you can't start until you have a contract, because you're telling us what your project is. And we're saying, okay, we approve this project now, you know, once you have the contract, you can start the work. But
You could set aside 10% for reimbursements and be like, you know, here's money that we set aside annually for reimbursements. And
Mm-hmm.
people can come through and get reimbursed. And then you know you have money set aside for that purpose.
Yeah.
And you
there's a
allow
way,
for it.
there's ways of dealing with it. It's just, you know, a lot of times I'm trying to look at what the septic, you know, rebates, and that's my priority, is to make sure the septic rebate program is always well funded. So that's very important to keep that. So a lot of times I'm looking at that and anticipating what it's going to be for the next year based upon the last year. And then I'm usually then taking town projects off next, right? Because those are town vetted projects that have water quality impacts. So, you know, trying to fund those as well. But there have been exceptions, you know, where we've reviewed them. You know, I think, you know, a good one was the Riverhead School District, you know, helping them gain funding, you know, to join the Riverside STP. You know, that was one where timing was critical because of the school budget.
So just moving on, the and just working with the state to allow water quality funds to be able to use for operation and maintenance, because that's a big issue. Like the trustees were not allowed to use it for the operation of the pump out boats, but those pump out boats really deter so much nitrogen out of the water. It's an important program but that's considered a operation and maintenance program, or like the cut or doing the dredging or startup operations for wastewater treatment facilities. Those things are important funding. That's hard. You can't, like, grants everywhere are only capital. They're never maintenance or operation. And this fund is flexible. You are able to make it what
So
you want it
they
to be.
could get a
And
grant.
these are needs that
So
we have.
just say like Sag Harbor, where they don't have a holding tank on the dock yet.
Mhm.
So they have to have when the boat's filled up in the village, they have to have it come and have it pumped out, which is a great expense. They could get a grant for that.
Right, but right now the state law doesn't allow it. So the recommendation is to work with the state to allow for
some
So how do we have,
portion of water quality money to go toward operations and maintenance costs. That's all the recommendation is saying, and you could be successful, the state may say no way, we don't know, but that's just identifying a need and making a recommendation, which is what this
well,
was.
make a recommendation to do that?
The recommendation is the town, oh, it says the state, it should say the town, sorry.
Does the town do that?
Well, so I was just gonna say 64E was just amended, and we've been working through the amendments, but water quality now is just one paragraph. It says projects that improve water quality.
So you think that we could do that?
But it doesn't allow operation and maintenance, I mean, I checked recently.
64E.
Yeah, this was the definition. Means projects designed to improve the quality of drinking and surface water, including operational.
Yeah, I was like, it just
They
changed. I didn't,
changed it?
yeah. Yeah, that's why I was
Including
like, wait,
operational
I was
expenses.
like, yeah, I was just like, I
So the
think
town
this
can
is
do
covered
it.
actually.
Yeah.
but- yeah.
So I remember you kind of saying it the other day.
No, but it says
But
related
not-
to the operation of Peconic Bay National Estuary Program.
Yeah, that's a
That's,
question mark.
that's meaning including giving the money to
Yeah.
PEP.
Well, so I think that's
That's not the
memorializing, I think it's memorializing the operational expenses of Peconic
Yeah, I don't
Estuary,
think
which we
that's
have in the
same thing
town
than
code.
What I'm saying. I'm talking about being able to designate an area. Maybe she's saying there's
Yeah.
much more broad
It-
definition.
There
So
is
you
a
have
much more
even
broad
more
definition now.
flexibility, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
I think it's referring to just the Peconic Estuary as a whole.
I don't think
But
we're
there's a
talking about
comma, though.
operation and
It's service
maintenance.
water quality and projects, including operational expenses, and then it says comma, and related to operational. So I don't know, it's like. it's
That's
a-
what we
can check.
were disputing with the state to say that comma, those commas are making it skewed where the money can go.
So Jim, do you think you can have that clarified?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly.
If there's up, then we don't have to worry about that. Then that would recommendation, we can say continue to allow for these things in the project program. Because right now, I don't know what your latest applications say, but they've always been barred from that.
Yeah, we only, well, operations and maintenance, it's interesting because it's very project specific, right? So a lot of times the operation and maintenance is for like a village is usually what we look at. And then that's kind of, included in their DOT, you know what I mean? Like their costs, for, stormwater drainage would be one where they're maintaining stormwater inlet drains or rain gardens or bioswales like that. So,
No, what I'm talking about,
but we
very
haven't-
specific operation and maintenance of a startup cost for an STP, the pump out boats, the
It would not,
cut.
would
Opening,
would it,
closing.
would it buy a new
Those are
pump out
water
boat?
quality things that are measurable and good for our environment.
Yeah.
However, we've always been
Yeah.
not allowed to use the money for those reasons.
Would it be able to buy a new pump out boat?
Yeah. The pump out boat was always allowed. It was the program that
Well,
could.
the
It's like a
trouble is-
capital
yeah,
project
the-
versus.
Yeah, the trouble now is like, I think they give like 60,000 for a pump out boat. And now a pump out boat, when we were buying them, they were like 80,000.
Mhm.
Now they're like 160, 150,000.
So the idea, the capital expenditure is not the
So
problem.
that,
it's the
that now there's
ongoing
not enough
operation.
money
Yeah.
to buy it. But now it could change.
But also,
that.
it's a budgeting thing too, which I think might be one of the reasons they were being conservative, because operation and maintenance expenses, as they go on year for year, they could also take up a lot of, our flexibility.
That's at
So-
your discretion.
Yeah.
And that's the point. Like you could say, somebody can come and say, okay, we need X number of dollars to start up this sewage treatment plant in Riverside, because that would be my project. I would ask for that. And you can say, yeah, you can do that now or not, and that's the point. So the green, so just moving on, I'm sorry to take so much time. Remediation is the next section. And it says, there's been nearly $12 million in remedying nitrogen. However, it's a small fraction of stormwater, to your point, Councilman Martell, that the stormwater is really a big frontier of water quality. So allowing for green infrastructure, like Jackie was just saying, the bioswales, the pipes that run right into these lakes and water bodies, those could be retrofitted with filtration devices or otherwise create some kind of technology that intercepts pathogens and sediments and allow for plants to uptake nutrients. And those are passive things that make a huge difference. So it's just saying, these are things to focus on, moving forward. Also POCs and pollutants of concerns, PFAS,
those are still ongoing issues with the water quality of our drinking water, our private wells. We had the successful project in East Quogue. We should just continue those kinds of collaborations with the health department.
Yeah.
And helping people get on public water where the wells are found to be contaminated with PFAS.
Yeah. You guys also looked at the West Hampton one for the water main expansion project that was brought to us by the county.
Yes, that was a great project, $4 million. And then, ag still continue to work with the agricultural community to help find solutions toward, remediating runoff. They're not required to have any drainage on, farmland.
Some of the comments here in restoration about, the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy speaks about shoreline structures and restoration, tidal wetlands. Does that trigger any discussion on reconsidering LWRP as a viable program to help us advance some of those important
So
coastal strengthening initiatives? And
that is a separate topic we can talk about with our coastal water protection plan and the LWRP, which I'm very familiar with because I dealt with this for many years, and the town opted to not do an LWRP, but instead we have a coastal water protection plan, which has all these very same recommendations in it. The only difference is that when you have an adopted LWRP, then the state gives the town the authority to regulate 1,500 feet out into open water, where we now don't, we don't have an adopted LWRP, so the state still has that jurisdiction.
Not to mention all the grant funding that would be available if we adopt the
So previous boards have thought that that wasn't a good thing. I've worked with trying to get that adopted for many years. The trustees were worried, there is home rule of the state. It's a great program.
I think it's worth the conversation. I mean, it's here in the recommendation where possible restoration of shoreline should be undertaken.
Absolutely. So, but you don't need an LWRP to do it, but you need an LWRP to get the grant funding to do it.
Right.
But we have our own grant money here, so we don't necessarily, you have your own control.
We've already looked at some smaller shoreline restoration projects that have received funding through the water quality program.
Yeah, we're one of the few towns that aren't a part of the LWRP. Many of our neighboring towns are.
And we did one in the village of Southampton Beach.
We're going to be talking about comprehensive plan updates, and that is a biggie.
And I would just say too, just in terms of your administration and land management, it would offset some of the workload by helping create that streamlined, efficiency between the state and the local municipality.
We tried for many, many years, and you can ask Marty Shea and myself. I worked on the initiative for many years, and the town and the trustees were not wanting to do it. So we came out with the coastal water protection plan in lieu of. However, that same plan could easily be translated back into an LWRP. So
How much of the home rule would you lose?
you don't lose home rule. You gain control from the state. So the state regulates from mean high water out 1,500 feet, and then it becomes like now federal waters, right? And when you have an adopted LWRP, the town then
Usurps the control of that water.
has the ability to control that water, and
It
with the
actually gives the
LWRP.
trustees power.
Some
Give
people,
power, and
they don't
also-
believe it,
What happens is this. The part that people have a problem with is that when you have an LWRP, you have to undergo what's known as a coastal consistency review. And the town would have to do that review for the state. And
How many times do you have to
and
do
then
it?
you have to show the state that you did that review, and that's where people are like,
But
see, the state's overseeing our coastal
But
and that is true. You have to do you have to say, we adopted these policies, and this activity, this action is consistent with those
It
policies.
could just be a form and that the planning board could do something.
Yes.
Yeah, and also it would be a good thing because it would pick out a bad spot in the coastal. If we did the bay with it, we could pick out a bad spot where it has to be fixed or needs attention.
Right. I remain at your disposal to do that.
Appendix A.
So
Okay.
that final thing you have
I
to
got one
move
more
on.
question on that.
Sure.
So if we did adopt that,
Yes.
would it give us the right to regulate docks going to Peconic Bay?
Yes.
That's your problem right there. That solves your problem for the
Because
future.
that's state waters. So yes. yes, and yes, out
Yeah.
1,500 feet.
And that, by the way, I think a lot of constituents would appreciate that, because there's times where there's things happening on the waters that are considered state waters that we don't have any authority to regulate, and the trustees have tried to intervene.
Yeah.
We've tried to intervene,
And you
but
can't.
now we could if we were hypothetically a part of it.
So we had one person who built a dock, which we could not, the trustees could not see anything. Then you had, previous to that, you had that floating, city.
I'm aware of all of those, and yes, and so the LWRP would help alleviate those
What-
things.
We should look into that.
One last question: you said that we would have to submit this coastal
Consistency.
consistent, but wouldn't the coastal management plan already suffice as that?
No, that
document?
is your policies about the things that you're talking about, like, so in water,
But it's-
For each
complex.
project, you have to go through
So
it.
each, so it's like a comp plan where you're saying, like, here's our coastal, we have a coastal water protection plan
Right.
policy document. But what we don't have, and what the state LWRP requires, is that somebody has to then do a consistency review and say,
Of each
does this
project.
project
Yeah.
that now I'm proposing, I want this mega, facility with all these bulkheads and whatever, where it was never bulkheaded before, let's
Sure.
just say. And then you go, but your policy is to not have that.
I've reviewed the coastal protection plan. I
Yeah.
would say that I would assume it functions as sort of a baseline to
Yes.
at least
It
because
was
it
our
identifies
alternative.
a lot of
Yes.
areas in the town that are vulnerable and whatnot.
Correct. It was our alternative to an LWRP and a previous board who did not want an LWRP. We were trying to advance an LWRP, and they said we can have our own plan, and we did that instead. But that did not give you the jurisdiction 1,500 feet out, and it also did not require a coastal consistency review.
What would it take to convert the coastal plan that we have now into an LWRP? Is that a consultant coming in and reviewing and
we'd
updating?
probably look at that as part of your comp plan update, I would say. That would be a good thing to do.
think, You know, back then there was different thoughts of it, and I think nowadays changed, and people want, myself, I would want to have the jurisdiction out into
Yeah.
150 feet into the bay.
So yeah, and that plays into these recommendations, because these recommendations for restoration about shorelines and other things are really play into coastal protection plan and a future LWRP. So they're here, but they're also in other places. I'll leave it at that. So the idea would be to put this on for public hearing, the updated maps, and then Appendix B and further are just all the projects that have been done and approved.
If we wanted to make any changes, though, we should do it before we notice the public hearing. Like, I don't know if we reference the.
There's no public hearing time frame. Like, it's up to you when you want to put it on. So you can,
Did it include the water main expansion in West Hampton? And maybe we might want to include the new legislation the state just passed yesterday about the 25,000, because we had the list of resources. Those are my only two comments.
so take your time, take a look, see if it's organized. It's a little scattershot a bit. I would like to just maybe even make it a little easier for the reader. And you put it on as you wish at
Okay.
any time.
Thank
So,
you for the
which is
update.
basically, we prepared it, the maps are ready to go. So it just comes down to having a public hearing and adopting it. And we can make any changes along the way.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to expand that IA, mapping of priority areas is huge, because once that's adopted, we can move forward with a lot more IA systems too. So
Well, it's not the whole town. You're saying it's just
it's
still the
expanded.
priority area. You're just getting rid of the distinctions within it.
So-
And expanding it.
expand, so the
You're
mediums,
expanding it?
so it went high, it's best to just look at it.
I thought
Let
it
me
was
just show
low,
you.
medium,
It's
high.
just medium,
Yeah, the
no, there
one
was never
town
low.
Oh.
It was always just kinda, here's one, medium is yellow and pink is high.
Yeah.
So when we say expand, we're saying we just made it all pink to the
Right,
to the
so
line.
it's the
And it didn't
same.
have these bubbly lines, we made it very clear on parcel boundaries, so it was easier to snap to a property line versus like a bubbly.
Yeah, we
Outline.
Is it fair to say
Ramp on the
previously
new
those that were in the yellow there was additional considerations that had to be made?
No, the
no,
code had
they-
like
they
high
both were
priority and
eligible.
medium priority.
okay.
They both were eligible.
So is it really an expansion then?
Yes, well, because we expanded beyond the yellow, so I wanted to make that point.
Okay.
So this
Oh,
was
right,
the
to
medium,
the
this was the
counties,
high.
So the county had like these outlooks, like this many years out, we'll include this, and this many years out, we'll include that. And we were like, let's just include all the county thing now, because
Yeah.
if it's a priority, it's a priority.
So do the before and after. Let's just see.
Yeah, that's why I was just saying, like, do you have NOAC to show, like, this was,
Is that easy to see? So you can see like,
is at the same scale?
Oh, yeah.
So we like kind of like looked at
see-
like residential
You can see
development
this.
patterns.
and then you can see this was white, and you can see now it's all pink down to here. See?
So we tried to go more by like road boundaries and boundaries that kind of made a little more sense, because we'd have like a
If you
bubble.
look right below this point, and you see this is white, and you see the golf course, now the pink comes all the way
All the way
down.
down.
And
Yeah.
that's what we need
And
to
those
say.
were the county.
That was a county priority.
Good.
So we kind of like smoothed it out and also took
Right.
into account where cesspools were and any like, environmental, like freshwater wetlands that we are aware of. We grabbed a lot of the Long Pond Greenbelt, which I think is very beneficial as well. Where that might have been in like, say the 12-year plan for the county. We were like, let's just do it now. Look at these historic dense neighborhoods. Let's grab those now.
Good.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Sorry we went over.
Question.
Thank you,
I have
guys.
one more question.
okay.
So on the septic system, IOE system, what you said about Lobster Inn, is that just for residential? Or would that include that motel apartment?
It could include the motel, yeah.
Okay.
We could, this is very flexible in terms of the idea is reduce nitrogen.
But not the restaurant?
The restaurant could connect to it as well. But I thought there's other ideas there too.
Yeah,
so.
other guys. The
The
Just
idea
out of
is create a
curiosity.
centralized system to service this area.
Yeah.
And then the output
yeah.
is instead of hundreds of milligrams per liter, because it's over 65 each house, it's less than 10.
There's some wetlands, there's some freshwater wetlands inside that area.
But we can talk offline about that.
Okay.
Happy to help. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next topic is the proposed landmarking of some designation for 2 properties. And we're happy to have Ed Wisnowski here with us today, the Chair of the Landmarks and Historic District Board, Julie Green, our town historian, and Kelly Doyle, Assistant Town Attorney. And I want to apologize for keeping you waiting for so long. We didn't.
Very interesting.
Well, it's interesting, but your time is valuable too, so I'm sorry for that.
It's
Do you want to
very important business, much more important.
Yeah, we could do that.
Well, don't say that, but everything.
I was for many years involved with the Otsego County Conservation Association, and we were involved in trying to catch up with the pollution of Otsego Lake in Cooperstown. It was its water supply. And it was a tough haul to get programs and grants in order to get the farmers and the cottagers who built their little cottages around the lake and had their waste pipes go directly into the lake, to get that all redone in order to keep the water supply for the village of Cooperstown potable for the community. And it took a tremendous amount of activity on private donors as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture to match funds in order to get the job done. So I know you're not that far behind the ball, but try to keep up with it. It's a very important thing.
Keep on starting.
Well, it was the U.S. Department of Agriculture had a matching program called EQUIP, Environmental Quality Improvement Program, and they would provide funds if there was a 50% match to a farmer in order to do a number of things. Perhaps just putting rain gutters on barns to shed the water in the right direction.
Wow, yeah.
Or stream buffer vegetation in order to reduce the amount of runoff from the pastures that were there. And even an innovative program for processing cow manure, which would be put into tanks and stored, and the methane would be captured.
They use it for
energy
electricity, right?
production.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know a number of farmers cow and sheep farmers up in Delaware County area, and That's it, they use it, they use,
Yeah, well, Delaware County is is the New York City watershed, and New York City basically controls the quality of the water
Yeah.
throughout the entire Delaware County.
so a really interesting, show on that recently, when, how they acquired the lands for the reservoirs and stuff, it was amazing.
So, landmark business?
Yes, let's get on with our landmark business.
Water quality was just an old portfolio from the year 2000, so. Yeah, there are two, do we have reports?
Yes,
for
yep,
the-
I handed
oh,
those
yeah.
out. Oh, good.
There are two proposed landmarks suggested. One is in the community of Flanders, Methodist Point site, and this comes out of Community Preservation Department, kind of partly water quality.
Not at all.
And it's also a very old historic house. It's probably the one that might have had a cesspool as its sanitation system. I don't know that for a fact, but the house and the site has a long history, including not only the house itself, but the barns. And since Julie, you did the.
I was gonna have you, let you go first, but
Well,
want me to do Methodist Point? Okay.
Go first.
Okay, so everybody's got the report. Let's see. So, so actually, this very first postcard here, this image, are the three structures that you can really make out are the structures that we'd like to landmark in the Landmark Historic District Board. We're in favor of. So Methodist Point, the barn. In this photograph, it's red currently, but it's a brown barn. The main white house and a windmill barn. In this postcard, you can see when it was actually a windmill. It was the wind blades were on top of this structure. It's been converted. So those are the three structures that we were hoping to have landmarked. It's on 4.5 acres of land along Reeves Bay and has been identified as a historic resource and contributing structures.
How many acres?
4.5. And in the town's duck farming, maritime, and recreational history, so it checks off quite a few boxes. The property was evaluated in the town of Southampton Resources Survey, which was the AKRF in 2014 as a potential resource, and each structure possesses characteristics that are historically significant. So it's located at 1040 Flanders Road, which is on Otter Hole Neck, which is its historic name for the location in the hamlet of Flanders, first settled at about 1760 by Josiah Goodale. It was purchased in 2021 by the town's Community Preservation Fund to acquire the property as both wetland preservation and historic preservation target areas. The next page shows a photograph probably around 1875 of Reeves Bay. The property is to the right of this, kind of juts out into the water. And the house that was originally stood on this property is kind of hidden in those trees. So I'll give a little early history of the property.
Wait a minute, so you're saying the town already purchased in 2021 the property? With the homes on it, with
Yes,
no
everything.
discussion of what would happen with the homes? And now it's,
No, at that time, it was that we were buying it with historic preservation target as well as wetland
and just
preservation.
what happened in the last 4 years, we just, it
It's
was,
just it's just been.
but we always knew we were gonna,
Restore the main house,
Restore
the
it.
barn, and the windmill.
There were
barn.
several other little structures on there too that we were supposed to remove. Did
There
we ever
are
do that?
structures on there, and I just spoke to Nick Jimenez this morning, and those, we're just waiting on PSE&G to remove
Electricity,
the electricity and all of that, so yeah.
then the highway's gonna go down with the excavator from the transfer station and take them down. do it.
So we're not
Yeah.
landmarking the whole thing, we're
No,
just
we're
these
just landmarking
specific
these three
structures?
structures, right?
I think there's like 3 buildings, maybe 4, which a couple are gonna come down. Some of them are pretty small.
Yeah, there's a couple little garages, there's some little sheds and things like that. But there are some structures that really need to come down. And now that we've restored the Reeves Bay overlook, you can see this property. So it'll be a lovely view from Reeves Bay, the overlook catwalk.
An additional historic site for Flanders, which is really nice.
Really, yeah,
How did
absolutely.
it called Methodist Point?
So originally, there was talk that it was called Methodist Point because of the Griffin family, who were the second owners of the property that had improved it. But I did a little bit more research on the Smith family that owned it first. They were instrumental in the Methodist Church being founded in Sag Harbor. They were Charles Smith was a coastal trader, so he worked out of Sag Harbor, and then they bought this property in Flanders. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find the original deed. Sometimes those things weren't recorded way back when, so we know that they owned it till 1857, when Mrs. Dorcas Smith, the Captain Smith's wife, passed away. But they were instrumental in the Methodist Church in Sag Harbor. And back in the day, with Methodism and was becoming a church of note, or congregations were being established, they would have itinerant preachers on horseback come out, and they would go for different things, and they would meet in people's homes and hold service. So this home, the original home, there's a photograph of the original home that's no longer standing on the property. That was probably where they had an itinerant preacher came, and that's where the name comes from. That's a better, yeah. So that was the original Smith house that was on the point.
Was anyone living on the properties when the town purchased them in 21?
I think there were just renters.
And have vacated?
Everybody's, yeah, it's all been vacated. 2022? Okay.
The people were vacant by the time, right? That we didn't-
had to wait a little while to
After they got done repainting the building.
Yes, that's another point we had. We painted the stripes. So it used to have red stripes on it, and we painted it. Because it's so visual from 24. I mean, it's just this big, beautiful White House, which will be beautiful again. So that's how it got its name as Methodist Point. Smith family sold the property to, out of order here. So in 1858, the Smith family sold the 25-acre. So originally it was 25 acres. With this purchase of 4.5 acres, we've put the 25 acres back together again as town-owned property. In 1858, the Smith family sold the property to John L. Griffin for $675. There is a recorded deed for that. John's son, Samuel Griffin, as a young man, made his livelihood working in the cordwood industry, shipping timber between Flanders and New Haven, Connecticut, before eventually settling down on his father's farm. The cordwood industry in the area was a primary source of income, with thousands of cords worth being cut every winter. Teams of horses would then haul the wood over to the landings on shore, where it would be ready to load on sloops and schooners that sailed to Connecticut and New York City ports, providing fuel for the burgeoning metropolis. In 1884, Samuel Griffin turned his attention to duck growing industry. Well, once they chop down all the trees, there's no more cordwood to ship, so you have to wait for new growth. And then in that time, he decided to turn his attention to duck growing industry and established the first duck farm in Flanders on Methodist Point. By the turn of the 20th century, the farm was raising more than 5,000 ducklings per year. So the duck industry was better known in the Spionk and Eastport area at the time, but this was the first in Flanders area. And then also, so for a very early time period, we have the cordwood industry. I think in the photograph on the back of the front page, you can see these ships out in Reeves Bay. You have a better picture of that. You can actually see the schooners out there on it's that first black and white.
So the cordwood industry, and then they get into the duck farming industry, and then they, at the turn of the 20th century, they take advantage of the boarding house industry. So Samuel Griffin in 1884 builds the big White House that's on the property now. And they took in boarders with his wife and 2 daughters, helping with guests and things like that. So with the railroad coming in 1870, 1844 to Greenport and Riverhead, so it was easy access for people to come out. And then 1870, when it arrived through Southampton town, bringing lots of visitors, and Flanders became quite a summer resort of note. Most of the summer boarding houses in Flanders have all burned down. So there were just a few that were left. This is one of the ones that's remaining. So by the close of the 19th century, there were approximately 10 boarding houses and converted farmhouses operating in Flanders. Samuel's wife, Annie, as I mentioned, and daughters Fanny and Blanche, most likely were in charge of the guest accommodations. With the marriage in 1914 of Samuel Griffin's daughter Blanche to Thomas Irving Havens, a neighbor, the duck farming daily operations eventually the duck farming operations passed down to her husband, and then working alongside his son-in-law Samuel. With Samuel Griffin, the farm became known as Griffin and Havens Duck Farm, and they dropped the G from Griffin. Thomas Havens took the duck farm to the next level of success and was a founder and member of the Long Island Duck Farmers Association. Riding on the coattails of the Griffin and Havens duck farming success, the western portion of Otter Hole Neck was developed by Carl Neighbor as a duck farm, and it's home to our big duck. That's where, so he had a smaller farm next door, and they have the our national and state landmark of the big duck. Also to note that in 1958, Mr. Havens gifted the Flanders Men's Club the property, buildings and grounds that they call home. Up until that time, it had been used for raising ducklings. So these other buildings that we now have been made into the Flanders Men's Club were part of the duck farm as well. And then there's just a lot of some newspaper clippings that talk about the duck farm. But with the decline of the duck industry due to many factors, including water pollution, so our water quality, and Havens' death in 1966, duck farming ceased on the point. His widow, Blanche Griffin Havens, died in 1975, and the property, after nearly 120 years, passed out of the Griffin family. With potential landmarking of these 3 structures, the circa 1890 main farmhouse, the circa 1800 barn. So the barn goes back to the Smith family. So we have a historic resource from the original owners of the property. And then the main farmhouse, which was built by the Griffins, and the 1930s converted windmill barn. The community preservation plans to restore the property and its rightful place in Flanders and the Southampton agricultural and recreational history.
Do we have estimates on the cost of the restoration for all 3 buildings, for each of the buildings?
Right now, what we're doing is some repairs to the roof and things like that, so that we can
Make it stable.
just make it stable and make sure that we don't incur any more damage with leaks and things like that.
Looks like it, based on the review committee, it checks off 3 of the 5.
For the town criteria, right?
And you're going to restore the windmill as a windmill?
I don't believe so. I think we'll leave it as it is, because they converted it to steam pump inside. So that's a really interesting evolution of the technology at the
It's
time.
still there?
All the mechanisms inside, yeah. And also what's nice to know is that the Smith family and the Squires family, so the Ellis Squires Senior House that's on Newtown Lane, that's also a landmark, also with the Community Preservation Fund. They're related. Their children married each other in 2 or 3 generations, so the Squires and the Smiths were,
Cousins so long.
yes, maybe.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it. Very excited.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful spot.
Tell a good story.
What's that?
You always tell a good story.
Good.
But this was all part of a bigger idea of, that's why 7Zs we needed to obtain it. I think we were looking to buy it at the exact same time.
Yeah.
So that
we
once
were.
that was cleared out, we'd have the view shed of Methodist Point, all of Reed's Bay, and really give the Flanders area their historical area back.
We were pretty much in contract at the same time for both properties, but obviously the 7Cs has been caught up in litigation. But
What's the plan for, once it's restored? I mean, is somebody gonna steward it for us?
Right, that's what we're hoping to look into, and that's one of the reasons also, I'm not sure if Jackie's here, but, about having it restored and then bringing a steward in or working with the steward about what they would need. There's the Flanders Historical Society that has been looking for a home. This is a very large house, so it would be something, and it would also, now if we have some more maintenance with CPF fund, we can help stewards take care of these big structures.
Could be a good thing. Be like the one in Sag Harbor.
Yeah.
People go there and write about ducks.
All right, well, that's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, you've got one you want to talk to us about now in Watermill?
Yes, this is a very old house located in Hayground, the 439 Hayground Road. The house was built in 1793, timber frame structure with vernacular style, but facing south, not facing the road, as we would often see the houses today. Basically, the kind of house, there are a couple of them still surviving in the Bridgehampton and surrounding area, was face south in order to capture the light and the heat from the sun in an era when people otherwise were using candles and trying to cut wood to keep warm in the evening. The house was built by Nathan Topping Cook. Nathan Topping Cook was a carpenter, woodworker, and until I started the research on this, I didn't realize that he was also a furniture maker, and his account books wound up in a museum of American historical furniture, the DuPont Museum in Delaware. His craft as a woodworker was combined with, as many people at the time also would have combined, with farming activity. And so Nathan Topping Cook built houses. He built some of the old houses in Mecox, which was one of the first settled areas outside of the initial settlement of Southampton Village itself. And gradually, also as the people moved away from the shoreline to farm a little bit more north into Hayground, he built houses there, and he probably learned partly how to build houses by building his own. That area of Hayground is kind of Cook's territory, so to speak. There is a map that I've annotated, done for the U.S. Coastal Survey in 1838, showing a number of Cooks. They're all related, but they're multi-generational in that area. And of course, one of the roads is called Cook's Lane. Actually, I think it's officially in town records called Halsey Cook Lane, after somebody who was called Halsey. Well, I have his name on that map there, Halsey Cook, who kind of disappeared in bankruptcy in the 1850s, 60s as a farmer. His farmer was sold off. The surrounding, I did provide little tax color on the Cook's property. Just to note that Southampton town tax assessment for 1801 was the total value of real estate was $507,805 for the whole town. And the tax thereon for the town for the year 1801 was $1,054.54. I dare say some things have changed since then. Nathan had 9 kids, one of whom was Allinson Cook, who was a farmer by later career. As a young man, he went off whaling, and I could not find in the ship's records that are available for some whalers, for either, both from those held in Massachusetts and those held in East Hampton, any kind of record of his of a ship that he was on. That's probably because they're either incomplete or I didn't discover the right repository for them. But the story accounts given in some of the local histories has him in whaling in the Pacific and having picked up a stranded son of the king of the Hawaiian Islands, and as a compensation being offered a wife of his choice from the local female population. I dare say I don't think it happened. And I did append because of his heavy interest in the moral fabric of Southampton town and of Bridgehampton. At the end of the report, 4 pieces in a local newspaper he wrote about both the name of Bridgehampton, which has been called and is now again called Bull's Head. That's the Bull's Head Main Street Historic District in Bridgehampton. But he was ranting and raving about how ugly the name Bull's Head was because it came from the tavern that was located in the corner where the monument is in Bridgehampton. And it was a notorious place for people to assemble. And since he was a strict prohibitionist, he spent a good deal of time arguing about why the name Bridgehampton is beautiful and the name Bull's Head being used for it is ugly and awful. And the articles are very interesting because it gives some both character to the built structure of Bridgehampton in 1830, 1840, and also for the kind of military training that was going on early during the Revolutionary War period. Allinson Cook did as an 1808 person, did have his relatives, uncles and some older cousins in the Revolutionary War. So he had some characteristic memories of the military tradition and the military training that was taking place in the early 1800s for the local militias in Southampton town. Allinson Cook married a Halsey, local Halsey, and had one son, Addison Cook, who also was very significant in the community, not only for his civic activity. He was involved in long-term memberships in the Hampton Library, which was an important institution in the late 1880s and 1900 period. In the Sag Harbor Bank, I forget how many years he served on that. He served as well on Suffolk County Commission for basically having and laying out the plots of shellfish rights for use in the Southampton town. So he was 1891. He's appointed Suffolk County Shellfish Commissioner. He also was part of the agricultural community in terms of serving and supporting what was a agricultural fair in Southampton town for this portion of Suffolk County. Not that they were not getting along in terms of the agricultural fair interest in Suffolk County, and so they split off for a while and did for 5 or 6 years maintain a separate exhibition and prize system for the various kinds of things that the county fairs of the day would have provided for. A lot of private surveying went on that he conducted, and probably the biggest development project was the laying out of Arthur Benson's Montauk Point development, which eventually was interrupted by economic circumstances for Benson along the way. The house Addison Cook had lived in eventually fell to his only daughter, Carolyn Cook, who basically was married to somebody who lived and worked in Brooklyn, but after Addison Cook died, she used the house for summer. And also she got involved with the Hayground windmill, another windmill story here.
Very popularly.
Oh, and you're going to probably hear more. The windmill, the Hayground windmill, was a long-time windmill, started 1808, operated until 1919, before it, like many other windmills, was bought up by private resources and relocated. The Hayground windmill was picked up and dragged down to Mecox, to the shoreline, and then dragged along the beach about 10 miles to East Hampton, and put on an East Hampton estate where it sits today. And it's not a working windmill, but it's an ornament. And of course, it's a mirror of the windmill story of the Clapham, Clapham didn't purchase it.
The Hoyts did,
Hoyts purchased it first.
the one that's up at the
That
college.
is on the Southampton
College.
campus of Stony Brook University. So again, an ornament that was the importance. She did try to resist the relocation of it in terms of a story that was in a Brooklyn newspaper that I quoted there. And I did find a picture of her at the windmill as well in 1921. The picture was found in the papers of Agnes Pelton, an artist. That papers are held in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. And there is a picture of Agnes Pelton that I provided. I did not know about it, but somebody who I spoke to about 4 weeks ago, while I was doing this report, was talking about, we were talking about old houses, and I was talking about this one, and it says, there's a picture of it in the Bridgehampton Museum that was currently on exhibition. And that was Ann Sanford from Sagaponic, and she happened to take a picture of it and
That's
provided
great.
me with the
Yeah.
picture and a rather serendipitous event that took place. After Cook died, the property went to another merchant family from New York, the Wise family, who held it for about 16 years, from 1947 to 63. Then it was bought by Seymour Litvinoff and his wife, Toy Litvinoff. I think her whole name was Toy Story Litvinoff. But he was a theater producer in New York and eventually went to Hollywood and produced films, some of them rather notable. Clockwork Orange, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and an Australian Aboriginal theme film, Walkabout, that was significant about 25, 30 years ago.
That's good. Remember that.
Do you remember?
Yeah, very good.
So, after Litvinoff ownership ended, it passed to Hans Decker from a German-born businessman from New York who is still alive at 96, lives in Virginia. He is the applicant for the landmarking of this house.
Does he currently occupy the home?
No, it's not been occupied for probably 2 to 3 years, and the house has been a little overgrown with foliage currently, and landscape. I did take some current pictures, which are at the end of the report. They were taken June 17th. The grass is kind of high, tick type height, and but the house is on its exterior in decent condition and relatively unchanged in terms of any modern renovations. There was an addition put on the south, one-story addition, probably sometime in the mid to later 1800s. Otherwise, the house is pretty well intact, and the interior frame structure, I have images of it that were also in the report, kind of giving the flavor of the older styles structure of the house, although that is not specifically pertinent to the landmarking criteria that's involved.
Looks like the photograph and the painting don't really mix, because it looks like in the painting there's a chimney in the middle.
Yes, I think that was artist's
Yeah.
Interpretation.
But that's a little concerning that it's been 3 years it's not been occupied and it's being overgrown, and yet he would like us to landmark it.
Well, it's associated with an attempt to develop a second residence on the property. This would be a carriage house for new residents to be built under the town code. There is a incentive called the carriage house.
For how many acres is it? It's gotta be more than 3, right, to have a carriage house?
4 point something, you said, right?
It's a fairly small parcel, but it qualifies, and that was the basis of the conditions for seeking the landmark status of the house.
I'm not sure, and you couldn't just have it be called a carriage house, it has to be historic in order to be a carriage house?
In order to get a second right for residential structure on that property, you would have to have a carriage house exemption, which is in the code. If it is landmarked and preserved by the owner, then the second house then becomes possible to build.
I always thought it was 3 acres for a carriage house.
So we're,
This particular one, you can do, this property is 1.1 acres, but the intent behind this was a lot of times these smaller homes get demolished and then they want to build a bigger, newer house. So this way they can get their new house, but also preserve this historic structure. And usually they're smaller because people used to have smaller houses. So then they can have that as a secondary, they call it the carriage house.
so they're going to still use the home.
Yes.
Yes, oh,
Yeah.
it'll be, yes.
Yeah. Because otherwise they would most likely want to just tear this down and build a new house. So this way they can get both. They can get their new house and preserve this historic structure.
Are we landmarking just the 3-story part or not the extension? That's probably coming down.
Well, the extension is
Part of it.
probably would remain intact. To do any change after this landmark, it would have to be approved by the Landmarks Board to be justified.
No, but when did that extension go on? Is that also considered historic?
Yes, well, it was done sometime by my assessment in the 1870s, 1880s.
Does the house have bathrooms?
Does it have?
Were they bathrooms?
I believe
Oh,
there's
yeah.
bathrooms, yeah. It's been
So we're
updated.
being
Oh,
asked,
internally, it has a modern,
Yeah.
some modernization. Yeah.
How about the septic?
I'm sure it's got a pool, a cesspool.
With the new house, though, I
They would
imagine
have
they
a
would.
new
put
system
a
in,
new
right.
system for
They
the
probably
new
hook it
house.
together.
Yeah.
Had to ask.
Have we done this before where, and maybe I'm being ignorant here, where we've designated a historic house so that the property owner can build another house and keep the dwelling to also profit from?
Yes, Diamond Farmhouse.
Just did that a little while ago.
Yeah.
Just a few years back.
And this home on Hayground Road, it faces south, but you don't lose the front. You can really see the front of the house, and it's just lovely the way it's set on the road. And it lends itself to being what you would see. This newer house would probably be behind it and not as visible, depending on how big it is. But
Oh, isn't it, I mean, it's only an acre of property. How big can the new house be? Isn't it going to still be constrained with setbacks? And
Well, they would need approval from the ZBA or, And that's also in the code with respect to preserving historic properties that the ZBA is empowered to grant variances appropriate to preserving historic structures.
If we don't do it, they're gonna tear it down. Then you lose it forever.
And it still goes through the review process for ARB, so the Architectural Review Board would, of course, review any application for a new house, keeping in mind that there is a historic structure on the property.
and it's not, the town doesn't give any funding like you would with a facade easement.
In theory, that might be something that could be requested and that would have to be available,
But for right now,
evaluated.
it's just,
But yeah, it's not involved with this, yeah.
How far off the road is it?
It's probably from right of way, I would say, about 15 feet.
So it's very close.
yeah, it's close.
Well, the house I live in was built in 1840. It's even closer to the right
So that's
of way.
gonna be my next question. What do the homes around it look like? Are they all kind of in the same realm?
Well, it's it basically is a neighborhood in transition. There have been some subdivisions around the property, and more modern structures are up there. It's not a historic neighborhood per se.
Used to be all farms.
I mean, most of the newer homes are all kind of flag lotted too, so
Yeah.
they're like just long gravel driveways with hedge. There are historic structures, other cook houses and Haynes houses that are up at the north end. So as you drive along, you do see these historic structures, especially on the east side of the road.
What kind of guarantees or, do we get from people that we landmark the house? Of course, it has to be maintained. And what if it isn't? We're not supposed to have it be demolished ever because now it's landmarked.
Well, landmark status requires the obligation, a coercive obligation, ultimately for maintenance of the structure to whoever the property owner is. Generally speaking, the property owners of this house have been people with, in the 20th century, people with deeper pockets. And this house has been owned by the same person for 49 years or so. So it's aged with the current ownership, and I think that's, the point at which less attention was paid as the owners got very old.
Yeah, I would say that it's just really the grass has gotten high. You know what I mean? I think the house has been maintained very well by the Decker family.
Okay.
Are they gonna, once this happens, and they build the new home, are they gonna sell it, or is it gonna stay in the family?
You couldn't sell it without subdividing, right? I mean, if it's on the same.
So yeah, the new home will be built on the same property. Yeah, there won't be a subdivision. And the new owner who builds that new home is obligated to take care of it.
So in other words, the guy's making sure this house is gonna stay there when he
And
sells the property.
it's not written in stone that anyone's going to build a second structure on the property. They
Not
could
at
move
this
in.
point,
They
too,
could
yeah,
move
there's-
into this landmarked home.
I believe the.
What do you mean they? Who
my
are
s-
you talking
Who's
about?
ever? I mean, the potential purchase buyer doesn't necessarily
Oh,
have
the
to build.
owner is selling it?
I think what I understand, I could be wrong, is that the person who owned it for the last 47 years, he loves the house and he wants to protect it. And he's 96, and he knows that when he goes, it's most likely going to be sold for him to protect the house. If he landmarks it, then it's going to keep on going how it is. And the person who buys the property has a choice to either live in that house as a landmark or build a second home, a modern home, and keep that home.
Right.
They can put the jacuzzi and all that stuff in the new home. Steam, bathrooms and stuff like that. I think the guy's given a lot of thought to how to protect the house.
Yes.
And I think this option of being able to build a second home on the property, it doesn't, it's not a detriment in any way. You're just saving this old house, and I think,
Yeah, but now you're just giving somebody 2 homes on 1 acre when it's probably a 1 acre, minimum. So now it's basically half-acre zoning you're creating by letting them do it.
it's only to protect, you know what I mean? It's not a.
Well, it's no different than having, I mean, it's an accessory apartment, quote, so to speak. The equivalent of having another living space for a family or somebody in the house. And, that's done other places in other ways. It's not really a question of affecting the zoning. in
Yeah, I
any
think
way.
but if it were an accessory dwelling, it's not allowed, it wouldn't be big enough, I don't think, right?
For carriage house. right?
The carriage, well, it's big enough. I mean, it was used as the residence of the current owner and the former owner.
Oh, yeah, I just mean the parcel. Mm. All right, I'm just, trying to think on the spot about what.
So what's the next step here? You're looking to put this on for a public hearing?
Yeah, I'm for a public hearing. The owner's attorney had asked for September 23rd.
It would still need zoning board for the second house, right?
It gets referred to.
Right, yeah.
So they'd make an independent decision on that.
Yeah, there's nothing set in stone
It's a
right
whole
now.
separate matter.
It's just,
Right.
I'm fine with it.
You just, the
you
board
have
here
the
is just,
ability to go to the zoning board of
yeah, we're just
appeals.
landmarking the building, that's all.
Protecting it.
Right, this is not part of the decision on
No.
landmarking or whatever else happens with the property. We're not guaranteeing the new owner the right to build another
Separate house, yeah, on
another
the
home.
property.
No.
Just that they can't tear this down.
Mm,
It's-
okay.
Somebody would have to make the decision. This is the carriage house that allows you to qualify.
They're actually asking to have a restriction placed on their property, more than there is now, right?
Yeah.
Such land.
This is the main house and gold.
Is this gonna be the main house?
Yeah, like
It could do.
Like
do
if
an
this is the
accessory
main house, this would
structure.
allow them to just build another structure, could be
Build a matching replication.
location. Yeah.
Go to the zoning board and see, yeah.
Did you say how many square feet this house
One
is?
point something. Oh, no, never mind. I
The
think
house
acres.
itself is,
I might have that record here.
Bring this off the back.
I have the,
it looks like 4 bedrooms, right? 4 bedroom?
this is
Three.
1 story, let's see. Four bedrooms, it says in the assessor's report. Two full baths. Condition good. Effective year built 1988. And square foot, let's see if it gives any.
And this was part of the 40-acre division, which was a very early division in the late 17th century, which was establishing this whole area. And a lot of this land was allotted to the Cook family, and that's why it runs kind of the length of Hayground Road. So it was a very early division of land. They were giving people acreage in this part. So I was just a little filler while Ed was looking.
So living area is 2,728 feet. Full basement, 1,140 square feet. Attic, 1,140 square feet. So, I mean, does have some room to live
Yeah,
in.
All right, well, I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? Well, thank you. It's always nice to get the personal presentation on these properties so we
Glad that
can
you
fully
are all interested in
understand.
hearing
Yeah,
about them before public hearing. It's
Mhm.
important.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for
okay.
coming
Thanks so
in.
much.
Good seeing everybody.
Nice to see you all.
All right, so that brings us to the supervisor town council member liaison update. Michael, do you have anything you'd like to? tell us about?
I just wanted to briefly mention that on August 9th, the Sustainability Committee has organized an event. It's a little bit of a seminar. It's going to be moderated by legislator Ann Welker. It'll be a seminar on energy efficiency, how people can make upgrades through various grant funding opportunities, as well as other types of things that you could do that is environmentally friendly for lawn care and smart irrigation.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they'll be there with John Barrows, Paul Wagner, and former Supervisor Jay Schneiderman will be there representing the Mecox Bay Conservancy. That's going to be August 9th at 10 a.m. at Hampton Library. That's 2478 Main Street in Bridgehampton. It's free and open to the public, so feel free to get on down there if you're interested.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's see, I went to a Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Fund board meeting yesterday talking about water quality, and we're still working through the rubric on how to score the projects. This is the money that's 1/8 of a cent that the county's going to bring in on the sales tax. It's going to be about $3 million a month. So half to go to IA systems and half to sewer treatment plants. So we took testimony from some of the public, and we're just reworking a few things, and then we'll probably vote on the scoring system next month, and then move forward with some project evaluations. It's all subject to the county legislature. They're the ones that have to vote. We're just making recommendations. But it is moving along.
You know, if on the sewage treatment, is that for new projects or is that for, expansions of
It
sewage
can be
treatment? It can
expansions
be
or
both.
new, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should rename the Bel Air project to a better name because it's a new thing. But anyway,
Any ideas?
no. All the applications for the Army Corps DEC are sitting in the deputy supervisor's office waiting for him to sign it
For what?
for the permits, for the bulkhead, the wetland permits for the Bel Air, so we can start the project.
You mean that to go out to bid?
No, so we get the permits then we can go out the permit, then we can go out the bid.
So we had the design and we submitted for permits, and
Yes,
now
that's
the
what we're gonna do.
permits were provided and they need to be signed?
No, we have to go out for the permits.
Oh. So the applications for the permits
So
are
it's sitting over there.
in here.
So I'm
Yeah.
gonna make sure he signs
So the
it.
bulkheading is priority. That's the first thing.
Yes.
Has to
Yeah.
do.
Sure, if they weren't here for too long, but we'll
No,
follow up.
he just got him today.
Oh, okay.
I've been tracking it. And then also, there's going to be a little inconvenience for the people on Springville next week. From Springville, just south of the tracks down in Neptune's, they're going to approximately put 1,800 feet of new sidewalks on one side. Then they're going to do a little bit more on Wakeman to Bay Avenue sometime in August.
That's great. So is that going to interfere at all with the traffic? Because I'm just thinking we make sure
Yes.
that we give notice to the
That's why
emergency services.
that's going to be done. That's why I put it out today, so people. I hope Ray's watching, so he can tell all his people. And I might give Ray a call.
What'd you say? It's Springville?
Springville, south of Neptune.
Yeah, just south of the train tracks on Springville to Neptune's,
Okay.
and then Wakeman to Bay Avenue sometime in August. And if there's money left over, then they're going to do some sidewalks on Ocean in Bridgehampton, starting from the Ocean, working their way up to the village,
All right. That's great news.
spreading the sidewalks around the town.
Yeah.
So as liaison, we're getting a lot of requests too for around the high school in Hampton Bays to extend the sidewalks down Argonne east. Because we have some people with special needs and others that could really use a sidewalk down at Denon. So
I'll mention that tomorrow. I know we also want to do up Bay Avenue, because that's a high walk area too.
All right, well, for me,
Rick?
talking to special projects, I did meet with Kristen and Daryl on a few of the projects that we're talking about. For hopefully the near future, that would be the new skate park in Hampton Bays. The old skate park, the idea of a skate park has changed, so it's more of a urban cityscape, concrete type, where you can use a BMX bike or a skateboard. So I guess they're going to present a plan soon to us for that.
Well, we put the money in the budget to fully fund the plan that they presented last year,
Yeah,
so I
think
wonder if it's
all in
gonna
that same
change.
realm, yeah. There were a couple little changes in it. Also, the idea of maybe a full ball field at Iron Point Park, I know we were working on, that was partially funded, I believe, Maria, from last year. There's been some updates on the lighting on that. Some of the estimates came in a lot higher for the lighting
Yeah.
than we expected, but
They were
seems
gonna
like,
send me some specifics about it, and I was gonna try to assist with see if there was any, that SAM grant money from the assembly.
Yep.
But,
well, Daryl and Kristen are working hard on it. I'm glad that you are on top of that. Good Ground Park tonight, we have a concert at 7 o'clock, Mean Gene and the Flamethrowers.
Right.
Always a good one. That one usually gets a good crowd. And Monday night is our second and final concert at Ponquag Beach. At 6 o'clock, it's a Foreigner Journey Band. So
Ooh, that'll
they're
be a
getting
good one.
bigger. You know, weather permitting, it's not too cool. It's always a great time at the ocean, too. And, I had the pleasure of going to the Flanders Men's Club over the weekend for one of their fundraisers. And, I mention it because we have the Franca group, we have the CAC group now, and it was a good time to actually have a lot of one-on-one time with everybody, kind of off the cuff. You could sit in the corner and discuss some things. So it was a really good time for me, fact-finding and to see the people. And a lot of times you just get emails, you never see the faces on them. So it was a good time that I had. So I appreciate them coming up and, expressing their views. Always like to hear from them. So it was a good time.
it's nice. Isn't there a sandcastle contest too, for the youth group?
Yes.
That's Monday, 1
Monday,
o'clock.
right, at
Yeah,
Ponquag?
1 to 5.
Yep.
That'll be
And
fun.
there's something tomorrow, Friday night for the youth, right? Is it tomorrow or next Friday?
For
Graduation?
graduations, this Friday and next Friday at the middle school in Hampton Bays, yes.
Hmm. Okay. Good updates, thanks. Anything else, anybody? No? All right, then. Then I move to go into executive session to discuss acquisitions and confidential legal advice and then close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.